Let's get right down to it. Welcome everybody to another amazing, amazing accent section, part 8. And this one is how a bill becomes a law. State and federal levels. I am Tobias Wesley, pronouns he, him, currently support on the board of directors and executive committee of the ARC Illinois. Also served on the Illinois Council of Development Disabilities. Former president of the self advocacy possibility groups and past chair of the Alliance. Excuse me. Graduated from Partners in Policy, making Illinois regularly speaks at the Speak Up, Speak Out Summit and presented at national events including the Save and Become Powerful known as the Save Conference and the Tennessee Mega Conference. I was a long-time staff member of New Star Service as Satoma Star Services. Next slide, please. Just key little housekeeping rules so we all could be on the same page. The recording of this meeting will be sent out along with notes and links to presentation within a week. Please keep yourself muted while the presenter is talking. Please leave questions if you can to the end of the presentation. Capability is available by pressing the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And most importantly, please be respectful. Words to know. A bill is a proposal for a new law. A debate is a discussion where both sides of the agreement are listened to. A committee is a small group with the House of Representatives or state that focus on a specific topic. A policy is a law or set of laws. Veto means that the ability to reject a bill. Knowledge check. What are two chambers of Congress? How many legislators how many legislators make up the House of Representatives, the states? And now I'm going to introduce our speaker, Amanda. I hope I'm saying your last name right. Hedberg. She is her pronouns is she her. She is a strategic leader with experience in program designing, partnership making, has led to motive and the disability service, business development, and broad surgery. Currently serves as the Vice President of Strategic Inventory and Partnerships at Aspire. Oh, nice. Advocates missions to value growth through the cross-compelling combination and visionary leadership, and by Amanda Hedberg. Thank you. And also, we're going to hear from Garrett Reynolds. Him. He is a Chicago-based public service leader determined to expand, include employment, and build stronger communities. Work closely with partners, employees, and community stakeholders, project independence, and long-term success. Desires compassion and effective and strong into his master in public health education and as youth programs. He is champion forum forward thinking solutions that help people thrive in the world and to their community. How a bill becomes law.
Thank you so much, Tavares,
You're
for
welcome.
that introduction.
Take it away.
Cool. Thank you so much. And really, I would love to have you introduce me every time I do a speech from now on. That would be fantastic.
I may,
So
I
everybody on the
may leave my
call,
what's called.
what was that?
I'm gonna leave my emails.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you everybody for having Garrett and I. We're really excited to talk to you today about how a bill becomes a law. You'll notice that Garrett and I will switch off. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to answer them as we can. If we can't get to them during the presentation, we'll certainly be able to talk through them afterwards. So Garrett, I will let you take it away and start with our agenda.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday. Going over the agenda, we're going to talk through what is a bill, how a bill is different from a law, and steps for a bill becoming a law. And then we will leave some time at the end for Amanda and I to best answer any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Garrett. So, starting off with what is a bill? You heard Tavares briefly mention it in the words to know. If anyone just on camera wants to do a show of hands, how many of you have heard of a bill before? We know it's also sometimes there's people who are called Bill, but this is not a person's name. Seeing a couple hands. Okay, fantastic. So, the formal definition of a bill is the primary form of legislative measure used to propose a law. So, that's a lot of kind of official and fancy language there. But really, what a bill is it's an idea that somebody has that they want it to become a law. They want it to become part of our legal process. And Garrett's going to talk about what a law is in just a little bit more detail here. Yeah, next slide, please, Rio. Thank you.
All right. So, what is a bill? A bill is a written down idea for a law. The goal of a bill is to become a law. A bill will go through many different changes as it is debated, and having the right wording is very important. Bills come from many different places, such as advocacy groups, like the Arc of Illinois, from elected officials, and even from individuals that can add it to certain ballots to get it voted into becoming a law. And
Fantastic. Thank you. So bills versus laws. And I'm gonna pick on a specific bill that just recently became a law. Has anyone here heard of Kiki's Law? That was a law that I believe started, I don't know if it was formally through the ARC, but certainly has been, and the ARC endorsed it and was a huge part of getting it started. So Kiki's Law started as a bill. And so what a bill is it's a proposal. It's someone saying, hey, I want this to become a law. And sometimes a bill will say, hey, here's a current law that we have. I don't think this is working for us. So let's introduce a new bill so we can maybe change a law. And what's important about a bill is that it's not what we call legally binding. So that means if I, Amanda, introduce a bill, that doesn't mean that Garrett all of a sudden has to follow that bill. It's not a law yet. It's not a rule yet. When a bill becomes a law, that's when it becomes legally binding. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the specific steps, but it needs to pass the House of Representatives and the Senate. And I will pause here. I'm going to give you a little bit of a cheat sheet or a cheat for our knowledge check. The House of Representatives and the Senate are the chambers. So you might remember there was a question about the chambers. That's the House of Representatives and the Senate. So first, the bill needs to be passed through the chambers of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate. It needs to be signed by the president if it's a federal law, or it needs to be signed by the governor, which is a state law. Does anyone know who our governor is? in the state of Illinois? Feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself.
I know who it is.
Roger. The jerk is.
Well, say that one more time.
My name is Deidre.
So do you know who our governor is in the state of Illinois?
Yeah.
Governor
Tracy
Pritzker.
Presser.
J.V. Pritzker. That's right. That's right. And then does anyone know who our president is of the United States?
Stupid
Yeah,
Donald Trump.
I know who the president is.
Stupid
Donald
Donald
Trump.
Trump. Oh,
Donald
hell,
Trump.
he's stupid. A jerk. A jerk.
Well, yes, we could talk about our political perspectives later, but I hear you. Cool. Okay. So then again, we'll talk about this more, but if the president or the governor vetoes a bill, which that's them saying, nope, we don't want this, I don't approve of this bill, there actually is a way for that bill to still become a law. It needs to be overturned by the House and the Senate. Next slide, please.
All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the process. So introducing the bill. For a bill to be introduced, it needs to be sponsored by members of the House and or Senate. So at the federal level, the House and the Senate composes Congress. So over the next couple slides, we're going to talk from the federal perspective. The state perspective is very, very similar to this, but there are some nuances and differences at the state level. After a bill has sponsors, the member of the House of Representatives or the Senate introduces the bill to the rest of the chamber. It then gets assigned a number and is sent off to a committee. The bill's number will start with either an S or HR. If it is starting with an S, that means the bill originated in the Senate. If it's starting with HR, that means it originated in the House of Representatives. Next slide, please.
So once a bill is introduced, it either goes off to a committee or off to a subcommittee. And so what a committee is it's really a subsection of the Senate or the House. So I will ask another question. Does anyone happen to know how many senators we have at the federal level in the United States? How many senators do we have? So we've got 50 senators. We've got 2 senators per state, plus the VP the Vice President of the United States can serve as like a tiebreaker because that's an even number. So we've got 50 senators and we have, I believe it's 435 members of the House of Representatives. That's a lot of people, right? So to really be effective and get things done, the House of Representatives, they have a bunch of different committees and subcommittees. And same with the Senate, a bunch of different committees and subcommittees. And they all focus on different areas. Some might focus on the environment, some might focus on disability services, some might focus on families. Oh yeah, there's 100 senators. I don't know why I said 50 again. I always say that there's 100 senators. We have 50 states. Thank you for that, Dane. 100. I don't know. It's a Monday morning. Forgive me. 100 senators, 2 per state. Don't listen to me when we're talking about math. Okay. So again, that's even more, right? It's a lot of people. That's 400 plus, and that's 100 people. So when the bill first gets introduced, it gets sent into the committee and maybe a subcommittee, which is basically just a smaller version of a larger committee. And which committee it goes to depends on what the bill is about. And so during this time, when the bill is in the committee, the different members will research the bill, they'll have discussions, and they may make some changes. They may say, okay, we don't like this particular wording here, we're going to change this. Research shows that we should do something different here. And sometimes the bill will not go any further. Sometimes the committee will look at it and say, you know what, this is not a good fit. We don't want this to become a law. And what we say in that case is that it dies in committee, because that means it's not moving forward through the process anymore. Next slide, please. And so if the bill does not die in committee, if it keeps moving forward, the committee will vote to approve or reject the bill. And so in the case of Kiki's law, right, which I believe is a state law, but we're just pretending that it's a federal law at the moment. If the bill gets approved, it gets scheduled for debate. And so Garrett will talk a little bit more about what debate is in just a second here. But let's say that the bill started in a subcommittee, which again is like a smaller part of a broader committee. If it gets sent to subcommittee and it gets approved, then it goes back to the bigger committee for approval. So basically, for the bill to move forward into that next step towards becoming a law, it needs to be approved by the committee. And now I will let Garrett talk a little bit more about the debate process.
All right, so hearings. So while in committee, a bill is likely to undergo a hearing. This is when the public is able to weigh in on their views of the bill. So this is extremely important. So people, anybody, including everyone on this call, can go to these hearings, and you're able to give your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions on how that view could impact your life or how it could impact your community. Again, that bill will go under several changes during this process while in committee. So when people go to that, they formally submit what is called witness slips. The bill will then enter the markup stage where changes are made after hearing and researching the different viewpoints that were documented on those witness slips. Members then vote to accept or reject the changes that were made to the bill. Next slide, please.
Awesome. Thank you, Garrett. So now diving into the time for debate. So after leaving the committee, the bill is presented, debated, and voted on by the members of the House and the Senate. And so if the bill starts with an HR, does anyone want to put in the chat, if a bill starts with the letters HR, does that mean it started in the House or the Senate?
House.
House, that's right, exactly. So if the bill starts in the House, that means that it's first debated on in the House. And then the same goes for the Senate. If it starts with an S, it gets debated on in the Senate. So before, let's say the bill starts with an HR, let's say it started in the House, it needs to first pass in the House, and then it will follow the same process when it goes to the Senate. And so sometimes let's think about it, the House may pass a bill exactly as it is. They may vote on it and say, yes, we like this. And the Senate may look at it and say, we want to make a couple changes. And the Senate says, we will approve of this if you make these different changes. What happens then is that you've got two different versions of a bill, and only one bill can go to the president's desk, right? So what happens then if there's two different versions of the bill? A committee is formed to review the differences and then come up with that final bill. So oftentimes that looks like a compromise between the House and the Senate. Next slide, please. And so looking at the federal level, so thank goodness we've got it in writing here so I don't get it wrong. 51 of the 100 senators need to reach a simple majority to send the bill to the House. So simple majority, all that means is a regular majority, more than half. And then same for the House of Representatives. We need 218 out of 435 representatives to send the bill over to the Senate. And then at the state level, so this is looking specifically at our great state of Illinois, we need 30 of the 59 state senators to reach a simple majority. So that means, yep, the Senate gives it a thumbs up, and then it moves over to the House. And then we need 60 of the 118, I think that should be state House members to reach a simple majority to send it over to the Senate. Next slide, please.
All right, so on the president's desk, if the same version of the bill passes both the House of Representatives and the Senate, or for simpler terms, Congress, it is then sent for approval to the president's desk. So the president has 10 days to either approve or reject, which is called a veto, to the bill. If the president does nothing and Congress is still in session after 10 days, the bill will automatically become a law. And we've seen this happen over the last couple years with certain things. If 10 days pass and Congress is not in session, the bill is killed. So if it does not return to Congress and cannot be overturned, this is called a pocket veto. So this is where we see a lot of bills that go to die that they don't necessarily get voted or approved and or rejected, and they don't move past this stage of the president's desk. If it goes back to Congress, they are able to override a veto if two-thirds of the House and Senate vote in favor of the bill. So we got to get a lot of people on board to get that bill voted into law. All right. Knowledge
Fantastic.
check.
Oh, go
I can
ahead,
take it.
Garrett.
I was gonna say I could take this one. Knowledge check. So what are the two chambers of Congress? It's the House and the Senate. And how many legislators make up the House of Representatives? So there's 100 senators, and then if there needs to be a tiebreaker, that's where the vice president would have the ability to vote. And then there's 435 House of Representative members. And bonus points, we have 17 House of Representative members here in Illinois, and you may be wondering, how did they come up with that number 17? When they do the census every 10 years that looks at the population distribution of the country, and based on that distribution, that's how they come up with that magic 17 number for the state of Illinois.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Garrett. And thank you, everybody, for your engagement and your questions. So I know we have one question that's in the chat. What determines if a bill goes to a committee or a subcommittee? Great question. I can take that one. So it kind of depends on the situation, but every committee has a committee chair, which is essentially like the boss. They get to decide where the bill goes. And if a bill is really complicated, or if a bill requires someone who has expertise in a specific area, that's when they send it to a subcommittee. The subcommittee can be really, really focused on one specific area. So it's almost like if you need a real expert looking at it, looking at the bill, that's when it goes to the subcommittee. Does that answer your question, Colleen? Looks like you're on mute and I can't see if you're nodding your head or not, but oh, good. Thumbs up. Okay, fantastic. Great question. Other questions? So Sharon from Little City. Let's see. If the House and Senate have different versions and then a committee is formed, is it made up of members of both chambers? I believe it is, but Garrett, do you happen to know?
I think it depends on the specific committee. I think they're appointed based on several different criterias that are formed. Um, I think in the one slide deck we had a reference to that.
And I will say Jennifer, Rio, if either of you want to jump in as well.
I, I'm going to, I have I have a question, which is, what's, what's a, uh, once a bill becomes a law, like, like HR, like HR one, um, uh, can bills be, uh, can laws be undone and um, everything put back the way it was?
That's a great question, Bob. So I'm going to repeat the question back to you to make sure that I heard you correctly. Was your question, once a bill becomes a law, is there a way to undo it and bring things back to how they were? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
So oftentimes, yes, a bill can undo a law or change a law. I will say sometimes if a bill or excuse me, if a law has a big enough effect, it can take some time to undo kind of what's already happened from that law. But yes, that's there is that possibility.
Now,
Typically that happens when there's new people in the House, new people in the Senate. Etc. Garrett, did you have anything to add to that?
Um, I people also too to repeal a law could potentially get enough signatures to get it on the ballot. That could also help repeal a law. Additionally, too, one other thing, just because a law gets passed does not mean it instantly goes into effect. We've also seen cases where a bill becomes a law and then that law goes to court and it has even went up to our Supreme Court and the Supreme Court has the power to make sure that it does not go into effect. And then, oh, were you saying something, Bob? I think you were muted. And then Sharon, to answer your question, I wanted to make sure I was speaking accurately. So I viewed back to the one slide deck that we used as our reference, and I'm going to repeat your question. If the House and Senate have different versions and then a committee is formed, is it made up of members from both chambers? So this is a little bit of a unique circumstance when a bill is passed in the House and the Senate, and they are maybe different versions, a conference committee is created. This is a temporary joint committee made up of conferees from both the House and the Senate. Members are usually chosen from the committees that originally worked on the bill, but also the leaders of the individual of the House and the leader of the Senate can nominate people to join that temporary conference committee. During that committee, the members will then negotiate a compromise version of the bill. So we actually see this quite often, especially like say if the Democrats have control of the House and maybe the Republicans have control of the Senate, different versions of that bill will be created, and then they negotiate to compromise. After that compromised version is created, both chambers vote again, and then the bill goes to the president's desk to either be signed into law or vetoed. And then one thing I do want to mention with that too, a bill cannot become law unless both the chambers pass the exact same text. So if they did not compromise in that committee, the bill will automatically die in Congress.
okay, this is Bob again. The law in question is HR one that everyone talks about and cuts Medicaid and does all kinds of it does all kinds of stuff. So does the new Congress have to run a new law or can they to change all that or does it or can they just uh change the get rid of the existing bill or existing law?
Can you say that one more time, Bob? Were you saying, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Do they have to, does the Congress have to write a new bill to, to get
For
rid of,
HR 1 specifically?
yeah, to get rid of, to get rid of HR one? Do they have to write a new one or not?
So Bob's question is to undo HR 1 or to kind of repeal HR 1, would Congress need to write a new law? Or how does that work? And I think that's kind of a complicated question. Garrett, I don't know if you want to take this, but I believe there would probably need to be some new legislation
I'm
written
thinking
for
there
that.
would need to be new legislation introduced in order to get that.
If I can pop in here, that's correct. Once it becomes a law and it gets through the whole process, then somebody would either need to propose a new one or sometimes it's still the same process, but sometimes they'll introduce it as an amendment to it.
Mm,
So that's a way things can be altered.
yeah. And HR1 is pretty complicated. There's a lot of different pieces with HR1. So that would probably really take a lot of
I'm always the one that takes the hard ones because the hard ones, HR1 is the one that is affecting people with disabilities the most.
hmm
So,
yeah, no, it's a great question, Bob. And we do still have a few other questions in the
And
chat, so I just want to make
yes,
sure.
and I just want to add one little thing on there. Even with HR1, though it's signed into law, there's certain pieces of that legislation that are still going through the court system, and likely, we could see some overturns with that. But going into the next question because we're getting a little
If I
bit
can,
backed up.
I'm going
Yes,
to interrupt just a moment. I see there's a hand raise. Are you all able to see that as well?
Yes, I see
It's one in the
Matthew's hand
chat and
is
a hand. So
raised.
just if you can get that in there somewhere. And I will put a link to HR1 in the chat. It'll be the formal language, but at least there'll be a link for
Mhm.
we have a question about that there. So I
And
yield the floor again.
and HR1, just at a super high level, is that bill that's kind of about the Medicaid and about it's the one that typically I think of it as being primarily about Medicaid and how that all goes. It's also called the Big Beautiful Bill. You may have heard that as well. Okay, Matthew, if you want to ask your question, I see your hand is raised, and then we'll get to the ones in the chat.
perfect.
When I was learning about US government, I had heard this idea where if a bill had gone up to the president who vetoes it, it goes back down to the to the Senate and House, and they have the ability to um override the veto, and it gets passed anyway.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, did you want us to kind of clarify that, or were you just kind of making sure that you understood? Because that's
Well,
exactly right what you
it
said.
was kind of sound like you guys were commenting about like some ways it would that the bill could die bef before it comes before it gets to the president, and then you said that about the veto killing it. That's
Hmm.
that way, and then it was moving on, and not the So it's like uh, it kind of sounded like to me where you're like there was like more to it.
Yeah, it's a pretty complicated process, and a bill starts as an idea, like we said, and there's a lot of ways that that idea can either, be squashed, and then we say, nope, we're not moving it forward. You got to start from the beginning all over. Or what happens a lot of times too is it starts as an idea and then it changes and evolves a lot as it goes through the committee or as it goes through the debate. But yes, it can die in the committee. It can not be passed by the House or not be passed by the Senate, meaning it gets rejected. And yeah, and ultimately, if the president rejects it or vetoes it, it can be overridden. It's kind of hard because a two-thirds majority, that's a lot of people, but it certainly has happened. Vetoes by the president have been essentially it's like the House and Representatives,
I was
or sorry.
thinking it would have been easy in the sense of if they compromise on how to make it, like they could have said, this is what we want, and then then the president chose it, and then, but they were the ones that said they wanted it to begin with. So
Right, right.
why would it be so hard for them to override the veto? Would that mean would the president have to like justify the veto to make it difficult?
So
They
that's a
they made they're like we want this, so
yeah. So
what would have
sometimes
changed their mind? It was so
yes.
like three. It wouldn't it take two-thirds where you can go up to the president in the sense of then
Yeah.
it was died before it got to the president to begin with. Those
So
same three.
that's a Sorry to interrupt you, Matthew. Yeah,
Bill,
that's you're
Bill
hitting on
same
a
two says could.
yeah, you're hitting on a really important point here. For it to get to the president, it's only a simple majority, which all that means is half plus one. So you don't need two-thirds. There, I mean that may not sound like it's a big difference between essentially one half approving it versus two-thirds. But if you've got people on the fence, a bill or a law can come down to just a few people, a few senators or a few representatives in the House. So that's where that's a really good point. So, if the majority wants it and the president says no, then they have to get two-thirds. And Jennifer, looks like your hand is raised.
Yes, I have one I want to point out. Gary Arnold just put in the chat up some information about if people are interested in getting involved in the work around HR1 to protect Medicaid. There's a coalition meeting that happens monthly to organize. So definitely encourage people to get involved in that. And then we do have some other questions in the chat. I want to make
Yes.
sure that we can hit
Yep.
some of those. Matthew,
Amazing.
you
I'm gonna
asked some really complicated questions, which are good, and I'm going to refer you to a few other links we have that goes a little bit deeper, just so you know, we'll get you covered.
Perfect. So I'm going to
Fantastic.
start with Colleen, and thank you so much, Colleen, for asking. But how is it decided who is on one of these committees? So I'm going to talk through that a little bit. This can look a little bit different depending on exactly what committee, but typically where most bills start, it's called a standing committee, and that committee membership is decided by party leadership in each chamber. Party committees then assign members to that specific committee, and then approval by the full House or Senate is given for that committee to be formed. And the majority party typically gets more seats, and the minority party receives fewer seats for their representation. And there's lots of factors that go into members being included in that. And it can be anywhere from policy expertise to committee priorities, party priorities, regional interests. So think of, here in Illinois, we have a lot of farming. Maybe if there's an agricultural bill, they would want somebody from like a farming background to weigh in on that. And then, of course, seniority and experience within the Congress. Definitely weighs in. And Rio, I'm going to get to your question in a moment, but Colleen, you had another kind of follow-up question to that I want to answer real quick because it ties into this. And that's, are there any rules about how a committee or subcommittee is made up? In short, yes, there are rules and norms about how congressional committees and their subcommittees are made up. Um, going back to that party balance, like the majority party holds more seats on the committee, minority party has a little bit fewer representation. What's really unique about this is there is no fixed number of members required by the Constitution. Instead, each chamber sets committee sizes through its own rules that they establish. The House and Senate then decide how many seats each party receives, and the subcommittee follows very similar rules to that. But no, there's no exact fixed ratio required by law, but committees are structured so that the majority party has control throughout that committee process.
Thank you so much, Garrett. And Rio, to your question, what stages in the process can we as citizens, as voters, participate in the process? In theory, I believe all the stages, right? If the best way or one of the key ways to get involved is by contacting your legislators. So hopefully you all know who your state and federal representative and senator are. There's a website, I'm sure Jennifer can link it. It's really easy. You just type in your address, your home address, and it'll tell you exactly who all your legislators are. So you can, advocate for yourself, encourage your legislators to either vote yes or vote no on a bill. You can even just set up meetings with them before a bill is even up for debate and saying, we need a bill that, relates to this particular issue that I care about. So thank you
And
for that question.
And just to touch on that too, I'll often see emails from the ARC, from other advocacy groups, encouraging us to reach out to our congressional member in our district. And I think that is a really amazing opportunity where we can all email, call, even text our congressional members about how we feel about a specific law, or a bill, I should say, because it's not a law yet, but how we feel about a specific bill and can try to influence their sway to either vote for it or veto it.
Great point, Garrett. Yeah, thank you for adding that. Cool. And then
Sharon, oh,
take it, Garrett, go for it.
Sharon, how quick or long does this process take? Is there a maximum length of time? So, formally, there isn't, but there are specific rules that various committees have guided themselves with. But the short answer to that is no. This process can sometimes be very quick. Other times, most of the time, it's a pretty lengthy process where it's going through a couple committees. They are having the public weigh in. And then it does take time to be rectified, and they take that input again and they adjust the bill, and then they send it off to the president's desk.
If I can pop in on that one,
Jennifer.
you are absolutely right in that it can go on. It does need to happen within the legislative term. So there's 2 years that we can get everybody to go through the process, or all the bills to go through the process. And if it doesn't, by the end of that, it dies. But people can always reintroduce it. It'll have a new bill number, but we'll continue to build off that process. So that's why you might see new bill numbers for things that you've been hearing about for a while.
Mhm.
That's a good point because like even this weekend I just saw making the getting rid of the time changes and keeping daylight savings time, and it's a new bill number because it went through that cycle again.
And I'm just looking through the chat to make sure there weren't. I think we had a question about a referendum, which is different from a bill, or is I will tell you I'm not super familiar with referendums, but Garrett, are you able to take that, or maybe Jennifer? I don't want to speak incorrectly on something.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, but a referendum is when somebody wants to change something about an existing law. So it seeks to take that from a bill to then signing in another law to referend the current law. Am I correct in understanding that?
Well, there's a couple of kinds of referendums, and I believe that you're right on that one. I need to look into it different because we will see HB, SB, HR, SR. So those are resolutions. When I hear referendum, what I think of is what will end up on our ballots. You'll hear a lot about referendums on our ballots. So when we are going to vote for the people that we want to take office, a lot of times our specific communities will have a referendum that they want to make. And so that's a different part of the process. So it's not about how a bill becomes a law, but that's more a local rules, and I think the referendums are kind of the equivalent to laws. But just like
Mm.
Bloomington will have referendums,
Yeah.
Normal will have referendums. I think counties might even be able to as well, but I have to confirm on that. So it's just a different level of our government.
Yeah, because I feel like I hear a lot about referendums like in my town about, do you want to vote on this referendum to support rebuilding the library or something like that. It's very, very local. Colleen, it looks like you have a lot of amazing questions about committees. I will say, I think you're reaching the end of the road in terms of my knowledge, so we can send a couple links about the committees specifically. Garrett, I don't know if you had thoughts on, it looks like she sent a couple questions around how many committees are there, which party leaders are deciding.
Well, I know for committees, there's no set number. If a bill is really complex, there may be several committees and even more subcommittees with that. Kind of depends on what the bill's purpose is. And they get changed, added, they get disbanded. They are the same primarily for the length of the bill, but that can always change if they need to bring in somebody with maybe a different perspective or more expertise on a certain part of it. They can add that person in or take a person away. But again, this is kind of, for lack of better words, a little bit of a gray area where there's not a lot of formal laws. There's just a lot of rules that the House or the Senate has created, and those rules are subject to change with, people being voted in and out of Congress itself. And then Amber, I see a hand up.
Hi, this is Amber. Um, a few things. I think a referendum, voters make a decision. It's like a direct way that we can make a decision about our community, usually more local, I think, as opposed to us electing representatives to like a county board for a local thing, and then our county board would make a decision. The actual voters make the decision on referendums, I think. But I see Colleen has like you said, Amanda, a lot of great questions. And I wanted to pass along the information that the staffers at the offices can answer so many questions. And even if you're not like politically aligned, like my representative is Congressman LaHood. But the staffers are super polite, and I have a few staffers that I like to call and ask my specific questions to, and they have time to just chat out all kinds of scenarios and questions when I call. So if we don't get to something, that might be a way that Colleen could ask a few more questions. And I think that they generally are really happy to share information with constituents. So.
Thank you, Amber. And yeah, Colleen, really, I would rather you hear it direct from the source and from the experts. So appreciate you, Amber, sharing that. We know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not going to pretend that I'm a policy expert here or a legislative expert. Okay, Deodra, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, from Arts of Life would like to ask about early voting. So is the question just how do you do early voting and what does that look like?
No, the question is, they didn't already voted about in the library about my house. But I didn't know what they was doing already voting. No, they didn't tell nobody. And then when I looked, somebody asked me if I could do early voting, so I got the flyer from the people, and they said yes, I could early vote in certain days, but they don't say specific date.
Got it. So it was a little hard to hear, but I think what you said is that there was some confusion last time around when and what time and how you could do early voting. Is that right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, and you're not alone in that. It can be confusing, you can do early voting via a mail-in ballot, or sometimes if you do it in person, there's specific hours. So honestly, what I would recommend is Googling it if you have a phone or if someone who you work with has a phone and can just research in your area. I wish I had the simple answer of, yes, here's the day and here's the time and here's the place. But I will
I know
say,
the first date was February 5th, which was the first day you could vote earlier by mail. And then I believe the primary election day is the 17th. Is somebody on the call that can, Amber shaking her head,
Yeah,
yes.
this is Rio. Deidre, you can go ahead and early vote right now. So if you know where to go to vote and you know that you're registered, you can go to the library and give them your ID and tell them, I'm ready
They
to
don't
vote.
ask for ID. They don't ask for ID.
Do you have a voter registration card?
They don't ask for that either.
Okay, so what I'll do, Deidre,
That's
is I'll send an
ID.
email to Annie and we can figure out when you're supposed to vote and where.
Okay, thanks, Mia.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
gone ahead and I'm
we
putting in the a link to where you can find your polling place as well, where you can go on the day of the election, just in case anybody needs that. I am going to, I hate to do this because I know there's still some questions, but we're getting very close to our end. So if we didn't get to your question, be sure to email us. We're going to be putting that information in the link as well. It's on your screen right now. And then I'm going to turn it back over to, I think Tavares might be closing us out.
Yes, I will close this out. I just want to say that it was exciting to hear Amanda and Greg talk about how the bill becomes a law, sharing their knowledge on the information, and I was excited that people was asking questions on some of the things they needed to know and all that. Overall, this was another exciting legislative event. People was engaged, on questions. The speakers had good knowledge and all that. So just give y'all all stuff a round of applause for another exciting legislative event, But I will say thank each and every last one of y'all, Jennifer, Rio, and Becky, if you're on here, if some of the art members is on here as well, for the people that chimed in as well today and all that. I thank you all for taking the time out to listen to these speakers. If it's information that we don't know, I hope we picked up on the information that we have heard today, or if it's information that we already knew and we helped out people that didn't know some of the things, all that, like putting stuff in the chat and all that. I thank you for all that, and also thank you to our sponsors that sponsors this for us to continue to have these amazing sessions and all that. So we will be sending out the meeting recordings and slides and resources and the vocabularies after the sessions. Thank you all. I hope the rest of y'all and everybody have a good evening.
Hi, everyone. This is Rio, just popping in really quickly. After the session closes, a window will appear with a survey. That survey is going to provide us with some feedback on how we did, if you have any suggestions, if you'd like to sign up for the ARC webinar ARC newsletter, or if you're someone who is really excited about the legislative process and you're looking forward to connecting with your legislators, we can help facilitate a meeting with your legislator, and we would love to do that.
Exactly what Rio said.
Answers in that.
Thank you, everyone.
Rio said I'm
Yeah.
Did someone call my name?
Yeah, I
I
did.
think they would.
What's up, Deldra?
I said the place you just named, the places, I'm interested in one of them. I'm gonna
Okay.
join up with one of them. Hi,
Okay.
Rio.
Sounds good. Bye, guys. Thanks for
Hey,
joining
Archie
us.
Life Weapon.
I had a question, Rio.
Okay, Nick, you can give your question to Annie and I'll answer it for you, okay?
Okay, I was wondering, where can I go vote?
I'll send Annie an email with the info.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Rio.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
No. No.